As you now know what web service is, types and architectural considerations from previous video on web service introduction, let's take a deep dive into REST. If you haven't watched previous video on web service introduction yet, I highly recommend that you watch it here before watching this current video to get most of it. Let's take a look how REST works, pros and cons of using it, and some use cases. REST or Representational State Transfer is a software design pattern for APIs on the web. REST APIs are used to allow two different pieces of software to communicate with each other. If you're writing your own software and want to integrate functionality from a third-party service, or even from another of your own services, into your code, a REST API is a standard way to do this. You can use a REST API by making a request to a service via a REST API endpoint, which is a combination of a URL and an HTTP method. You can use different HTTP methods to create, retrieve, update, or delete some data from that service. There are 6 guiding principles that should be considered when writing RESTful APIs. Separation of client and server. Server-side and client-side responsibilities are separated so that each side can be implemented independently of the other. The server-side code, the API, and the client-side code can each be changed without affecting the other, as long as both continue to communicate in the same format. Statelessness. The communication between client and server does not keep track of the state of sessions from one request to the next. The state of a session is included in each request, so neither the client nor the server needs to know the state of the other to communicate. Each request is complete and self-sufficient. Uniformity of the interface. The different actions and/or resources available with their specific endpoints and parameters must be decided and respected by the client and the server. Each response should contain enough information to be interpreted without the client needing any other information beforehand. Responses should not be too long and should contain links to other endpoints. Caching. Responses can be cached to avoid overloading the server unnecessarily. Caching must be well managed. The REST API must specify whether and for how long a response can be cached to avoid the client receiving outdated information. Layered architecture. A client connected to a REST API usually cannot distinguish whether it is communicating with the end server or an intermediate server. Code on demand. It means that an API can return executable code instead of a response in JSON or XML, for example. This means that a RESTful API can extend the client's code while simplifying it by providing executable code. Advantages. Lightweight. REST being lightweight requires less bandwidth. It's highly scalable and keeps applications that grow over time. Request. REST sends requests over simple URL. JSON. While REST works with other data formats, it works primarily for JSON, a most popular and modern data format in today's world. Disadvantages. Limited security features. REST relies on the underlying transport protocol, usually HTTP or HTTPS, for security measures, such as authentication and encryption. While this is often sufficient for many applications, it might not be adequate for more complex security requirements, particularly in enterprise settings. Statelessness. REST APIs are designed to be stateless, meaning each request should contain all the information needed to process it. While this promotes scalability and simplifies server-side implementations, it can also lead to increased complexity on the client side, as clients need to manage and maintain state information. Limited error handling. REST APIs typically use HTTP status codes to communicate errors, which can be limited in expressing the full range of possible issues that might arise during API interactions. This can make error handling and debugging more challenging for developers. When should you choose REST? Limited bandwidth, low cost, or simple operations. You can write simple URL to perform a basic, non-repetitive task. Also, if you have a lower income business at the moment or limited bandwidth, REST will perform much faster and give better results in these situations than SOAP. Developing public APIs. REST is a helpful framework for developing public APIs because it is so common, and therefore it is easy to find other developers who understand it. Additionally, it is highly flexible, bringing lots of options to the marketplace. This concludes our today's video on REST Deep Dive. Hope you learned a little something today. I'll be bringing more videos in this series soon. Thank you for watching. Comment below if you want me to cover any more topics like this. Please like, share and subscribe to this channel for more videos. Happy learning!